Good evening to our respected chairperson, ma'am, our distinguished guest, all advisors, principals of Amity International and Global Schools, the galaxy of all intellectuals, and my dear Amitians. I extend a heartfelt welcome to all of you to this online session to discuss the values imparted and opportunities provided by Sanskrit as a language and as a subject. Light is a symbol of brightness and prosperity. As sunlight expels the darkness of night, similarly, blessings brings our life, prosperity, and happiness. To make this day a blessed one, we invoke Goddess Saraswati by kindling virtual lamp of knowledge and wisdom.
Hello. हेलो हाँ संगीता अरे बहुत दिनों से तुम्हारे सुनने को नहीं मिला
Every plant is a soul blossoming in nature. Taking forward the tradition of amity, on behalf of our chairperson, ma'am, we would like to welcome our guest, Mr. Daniel Goodstein, with a virtual Tulsi planter. We welcome you, sir.
Warm welcome. Warm welcome.
Amity Education Resource Center, AERC, is a gateway to take Amitians to the world and bring the world to amity through its educational partnership with almost 30 countries. It was set up by our futuristic respected chairperson, ma'am, to nurture Amitians to become global leaders with a global perspective and strong values in tune with her vision to Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. With this, we cordially extend our invitation to Ms. Jyoti Arora, ma'am, Director, AERC, to introduce Mr. Daniel Goodstein to the audience. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. A very warm namaste and Shubh Ganesh Chaturthi to all present. Daniel Goodstein studied Sanskrit at St. James School, London, from the age of 5 to 17 years through the Cambridge IGCSE and AS level. In 2010, with his school, he took part in the recital of Sanskrit shlokas at Buckingham Palace to celebrate the Commonwealth Games baton launch ceremony. He went on to read mathematics at the University of Bristol and graduated last year with a bachelor's degree, first class honors. Since graduating, Daniel has completed a consultancy internship and has worked at 2 Catholic schools in West London. His responsibilities were to run maths intervention classes to prepare class 12 for examinations, execute the national tutoring program targeting class 6 to 9 math students whose progress was hampered by the pandemic, and later over the exam period to support students with special educational needs. Despite giving up Sanskrit at 17 years, the subject always remained an interest for him. He stated that the only notes and textbooks he still kept from school are his Sanskrit ones. In February this year, Daniel volunteered to help the Sanskrit outreach organization, Sanskrit at St. James. He has been specially invited by a respected chairperson, ma'am, a Sanskrit scholar herself, and a great patron of Sanskrit to visit Amity schools for 6 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for introducing sir to us. A futuristic educationist, an enterprising entrepreneur, a noble philanthropist, and above all, a doting mother to over 50,000 children studying across all branches of Amity International and global schools in India and abroad. Dr. Mrs. Amita Chauhan, Chairperson, Amity Group of Schools and RBEF, is a woman of substance. Ma'am believes that India has a rich reservoir of human values and culture. These values, when imparted under an educational system at par with global standards, could give Indian students an edge over the West. This led to the foundation of Amity Group of Schools, where the perfect amalgamation of tradition and modernity has nurtured thousands of Amitians who will help accomplish the mission and vision of our founder president, Sir Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, for making India a superpower by 2030. Under her inspirational guidance, Amity Group of Schools has scaled new phenomenal benchmarks of excellence in every field, be it sports, science, literature, or co-curricular activities. Ma'am is a great Sanskrit scholar and has been our spiritual guide who has always moved ahead with a motto to take Amity to greater heights. Under her guidance, Amity schools have been bestowed with prestigious BW Super 30 Top Education Brands Award 2023. We are truly honored, ma'am, to have your esteemed presence amongst us today. We would humbly request our honorable chairperson, ma'am, to address the gathering today. Over to you, ma'am.
Acha, Ritika, I think so. I don't want to come between Daniel and the children, no? Let Daniel speak and after that I speak.
Okay,
Hai na?
okay, ma'am.
Ha,
Sure,
Okay, ma'am.
sure, ma'am.
Because
Yes, ma'am.
I don't want to come between him and the children and the people. They should hear him first.
Sure, ma'am, sure.
Yeah.
Moving ahead, we would now request Mr. Daniel Goodstein, our guest for the day, to give his talk on the value and opportunity of Sanskrit. Over to you, sir.
Hey,
Ritika, he's just 22 years old.
Yes, ma'am.
okay. Thank you, everyone. This presentation, I'm going to speak a little bit about my time so far, and then talk about Sanskrit in the UK, and why I've enjoyed Sanskrit and some of the benefits of Sanskrit. And I'm hoping to inspire some of the Amity students to enjoy Sanskrit even more than they already do. Okay. So, as Amity does, I'm going to begin with the Gayatri Mantra, just one round. Om Bhurvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Okay, and in the school in the UK where I learned Sanskrit, we normally began lessons with a different mantra. It goes like this. Om Paramat Mane Nama Atha. Okay. So now we begin. First of all, some gratitude to the founder president and the respected chairperson, because I wouldn't be here without them and none of you would be here without them. A special thank you to the respected chairperson, because it was her vision to make this exchange happen. And a special thank you to the Amity Exchange Resource Centre, and particularly Ms. Jyoti Arora, who travelled to the UK and personally invited me back to India for this exchange. Okay. Quickly, how has my experience been so far in the schools? I've had a very good time teaching here. I've been doing maths lessons, Sanskrit lessons, some interactions, teaching some shlokas, and overall, students have been extremely attentive, respectful, and curious, which is everything I could have asked for. I've been very impressed with the staff at Amity schools. They've created a very loving, caring atmosphere, and staff are very quick to praise exemplary behavior. And I've been treated very well by the principals as well. They treated me as if I were a son to them. Okay. Also had the amazing chance to see Delhi. So these are some pictures. I got to see Qutb Minar, and the Iron Pillar is actually Sanskrit inscribed in the Iron Pillar. I went to the Taj Mahal, which was majestic. And my favorite was Akshardham Temple, where Rishi Sunak also visited last week. And there's incredible exhibitions about Vedic culture. So I'd highly recommend everyone to go there. Okay. Now, into the main part of the presentation about Sanskrit. So this is the Sanskrit IGCSE. This is how I was taught Sanskrit. I'm showing you this because it's very different to the CBSE qualification. So in CBSE, students tend to learn Sanskrit as a second language, to have conversations, to speak. Whereas the IGCSE teaches Sanskrit as an ancient language. So it's treated slightly differently. For comparison, there are other languages that are treated like this as well, that are taught in the UK and around the world. For example, Latin. Latin is an ancient language, and it's taught in many schools around the UK. And you can translate ancient Roman texts with them. Ancient Greek is taught in many schools, and you can translate ancient Greek text. And Sanskrit is like that. So we learned to translate ancient Sanskrit texts. We didn't learn to speak Sanskrit or have a conversation. In fact, there was no spoken component of our exam. So you could make it through the exam without speaking. And this is the main entry-level Sanskrit qualification around the world, outside of India. Okay, so what is the content in the IGCSE? What did I have to learn doing Sanskrit? Comprehension and translation, unseen Sanskrit to English text, English to Sanskrit translation, comprehension and translation of seen texts. So we engaged with the Mahabharata stories. These were adapted, simplified versions, but we engaged with Hitopadesha and Panchatantra stories, which are from about 500 years ago, and they're fables. And these were direct quotes from these stories. And also the Bhagavad Gita verses, genuine shlokas from the Bhagavad Gita. We'd learn about 20 of them, and they change every few years. And finally, something called epic civilization. This was the term given to the context of the Vedic era that we had to learn about to get a better understanding of these texts. So to explain what those things are, these things we learned in the cultural context. So we learned about the cosmos, Mahabhutani, Antahkaranam, Indriyani, Yugani, great elements, the organs of mind, the senses, and the ages. Human life, dharma, varna, ashram, karma, duty, castes, stages of life, and desire. Metaphysical ideas, Atman, Brahman, Moksha, Karman, Guna, Samsara, Samskara. And the gods. So these weren't religious teachings, but these were just to help us understand these texts. And I was very interested in this part of the course as well. I used to ask lots of questions. Okay. Sanskrit is taught to very young children. As Jyoti said in my introduction, I started learning from the age of 5. Mainly how to draw the letters, how to say the sounds, because it's very difficult learning the new script when we only know Roman English letters. So Sanskrit is being taught to young children in the UK, South Africa, Trinidad, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, and many other places. So there are sister schools of my school in these countries. So over time, thousands of students have gone through these schools having learned basic Sanskrit. If you're interested in the background of this picture, different letters are colored differently to indicate which part of your mouth you make those sounds with. But that's for another time. Okay. So now I'm going to show you a video where my school, in 2010, we were asked to make a performance for the Commonwealth Games baton ceremony. So the Commonwealth Games in 2010 was in Delhi. And traditionally there's a ceremony where the baton leaves the UK and makes its way to India. And this was the starting ceremony. So we were tasked to learn Sanskrit shloka and sing it there. So I am in this video and I'm in class 5, age 9. Okay. Can you hear it, by the way? You can hear it? Or no?
Renu ma'am, please mute yourself.
Yes.
There's sound, okay. Okay. You can hear me now.
Well, next, it's a very, very big moment indeed for some young people who come from the St James School Choir in Hammersmith in West London. They represent many, many different nationalities, and they're going to perform a poetic verse, the shloka. Beautiful moment for the pupils from St James School.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that. That video and that performance was quite instrumental in making my trip happen. I do have a couple other videos of St James students reciting Sanskrit. Some of them did it in Sanskrit speech competition. But because of rights issues, I don't think I can show them if this is being recorded. So I'm going to skip over those.
Well, next.
Okay, these are some of the senior students. And this is an exam question from the IGCSE with 2 Bhagavad Gita shlokas. These are some of the textbooks, very basic textbooks, 4 to 10-year-olds, and then these textbooks too, where you learn about the stories of Krishna and Rama while you're learning Sanskrit. So you learn about the Vedic stories and the ancient literature in conjunction with your Sanskrit learning. And then there's these Mahabharata textbooks. So these textbooks will take you to the end of class 8. And then for class 9 and 10, there isn't a set textbook. So this is Sanskrit at St. James. This is the organization I volunteered for. And they were born out of my school, and their mission is to promote Sanskrit learning all around the world through this IGCSE method. And the main thing they provide is the resources for the exam. They're the main provider. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to get into some reasons to study Sanskrit and the benefits of Sanskrit. So when I was interacting with Amity School students, I asked many of you, when I was in a Sanskrit class, I asked, why did you choose Sanskrit over French and German? And these were some of the answers I got. To learn about my country, because we're proud of our language, to help understand our own language, or to do better in Hindi, because it's seen as the language of the gods, because it's a perfect language, to help me with coding in the future, to learn about history, to learn about ancient knowledge, and to help keep Sanskrit alive. It's very interesting. Some students said to learn about history, because the ancient literature is traditionally seen as histories of the nation rather than mythologies. Okay, so now, why did I decide to do Sanskrit for so long? And why do I love this language? So it all started with the stories when I was very young. So in the primary school, every week, the whole school would come together because we weren't the biggest of schools, and we'd have a Sanskrit assembly. We'd learn some Sanskrit things, say some Sanskrit shlokas, and we'd hear stories from the Mahabharata. And I was completely enthralled by these stories, and they actually struck a chord quite deep within me. I'd never heard stories this profound, with such amazing heroes, villains, gurus, sages, battles. So it stuck in my mind, and it made me come back to Sanskrit, and it gave me a great respect for the Vedic era. And over time, I learned more about Vedic culture, and I'd have a chance to access some of these stories when I finally learned the actual Sanskrit skills to translate myself. And that was very gratifying, because you can get even an even deeper meaning when you translate things yourself. You can find linguistic idiosyncrasies that don't really get translated. And obviously, like I said, we learned about Bhagavad Gita, and it was fantastic to learn about the wisdom in that. And I'd ask so many questions, and we get into so many debates as a class that eventually my teacher just stopped answering my questions and said, "No, I know what you're doing, Daniel. You're just trying to delay the class." But that was that. But it leads me on to quite an important point, because in India, a lot of the time, the Bhagavad Gita is regarded as a religious text by some people, and it definitely does have religious significance. but I'd argue, as many would, that it still has a place in a secular education, and we can still engage with it from an intellectual, cultural, and historical perspective. So I'm not Hindu and I'm not religious. My school was multicultural. So there were Hindus, there were Sikhs, there were Christians, Muslims, and Jews there. My mother's a Christian and my father's Jewish, and neither of them are very religious, but still we all appreciate the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Finally, I'd gain a feeling of mental clarity, and I'd say this supported my studies in other subjects too. Now, why was this? To do Sanskrit, you need to be very precise and focused. But I'd also come into these lessons with a tremendous respect for the language itself. Unlike some of my other subjects, I wouldn't come into a lesson respecting the content as much. And I'd come away from Sanskrit lessons actually feeling quite humbled to have interacted with that and interacted with things that great people had been speaking and reading for thousands of years. So mathematics also requires focus, but after a Sanskrit lesson, I'd feel energized, balanced, ready for my day. We used to do it. My lessons used to be early in the morning. But mathematics, I may feel tired of focusing after doing mathematics. And I think it's it's definitely a different feeling for me. In fact, in my interview with Amity before they invited me to India, I was asked, did Sanskrit help you with your math studies, or did maths help you with your Sanskrit studies? And this was a question I genuinely never asked of myself. And I thought for about 5 seconds, and I realized that it was definitely Sanskrit helped me with my math studies because of that balance and intellectual balance I feel from it. Indeed, it probably helped me with all my subjects. Okay, moving on. What are some other benefits of Sanskrit? Okay, the language is beautiful and has an impeccable reputation. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some evidence that the language has an impeccable reputation. I've collected some quotes, so I'll let you read those for 30 seconds. Okay, when I was preparing this, there were actually so many more quotes than this, but I collected some of the ones of the people I'd heard of. Additionally, Sanskrit having an impeccable reputation, it's also seen very positively in interviews in the UK, and it's something UK students can speak about. So this was a sample of 15 students who studied Sanskrit at St. James School. This was from a long time ago. Many of them went to very, very good universities and did all sorts of degrees, not just Sanskrit, and became all kinds of different things. And many students have testified that Sanskrit supported them in their other studies. Okay. So some more benefits of Sanskrit. Studying Sanskrit gives you a deeper understanding of the English language and other Indo-European languages. This is most certainly true because Indo-European languages are very, they're often derived from Sanskrit in some parts. And you can say the same about Hindi as well. So studying Sanskrit will give you a deeper linguistic understanding and can help you appreciate things about your own language that you took for granted. And you will find that there are words that are very similar to Sanskrit words. The most similar word that I've come across is there's the Sanskrit word pandit for a spiritual teacher, and there's an English word pundit, which just means an expert in a certain topic. That's the most similar word I've come across. Studying Sanskrit gives you a better understanding of the world and allows you to access incredible literature, millions of verses filled with rare literary genius. This is also true. The Sanskrit ancient texts and mythologies are incredible, and there's so much of them. It's often not appreciated as much in the West. In India, people know, but in the West, many people don't know. And saying it gives you a better understanding of the world, I agree with that, and that's my opinion, because often in the West, we have an idea that we're the pinnacle of all civilizations. Having studied Sanskrit and these ancient texts, I know there were most certainly other incredible civilizations. Even if the stories aren't true, the civilization to have come up with them must have been incredibly advanced and intelligent. Sanskrit was the common language of sciences such as mathematics, astronomy, and medicine in pre-modern India. So in today's time, scientific literature is mostly all written in English. But thousands of years ago, the main scientific literature was written in Sanskrit. And there's great knowledge in those texts. The language, this is a quote, Sanskrit is a grammatically perfect language with 10 verbal classes, 8 cases, 3 numbers, and 3 genders. Sanskrit is one of the most well-structured and concise languages in the world, meaning you can say more with less words in Sanskrit. This is partly due to a linguistic process called sandhi, where words are joined together. Okay. Now, I want to show you a quote from an online essay about why you should study Sanskrit, written by the head of Sanskrit at St. James Senior Boys School, who taught me. Okay. There is a special mental discipline required to study a classical language, and attention to detail, acumen, patience, application of reason, the strengthening of memory, and heightened awareness are some of the skills and qualities that are developed. These skills contribute to a key reason why Latin and ancient Greek have been taught in Western education, and rightly so. Anyone who has studied all 3 of these sister languages, Latin, Greek, and Sanskrit, will appreciate the superlative rigor of the eldest sibling. Talking about Sanskrit. And he goes on to quote a revered hyperpolyglot, meaning he spoke many languages, about 20, who said, "The Sanskrit language, whatever be its antiquity, is of a wonderful structure, more perfect than the Greek, more copious than the Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either." Yeah, so he wrote this essay because so many parents would ask him what this language was and why their son should study it. And it's a very eloquent essay. I'd recommend it to anyone. Okay, moving on. I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent. So there's a brilliant TED Talk on how languages can change the way you think. So I'm not going to show you the TED Talk. I'll just show you a picture. I'd recommend it to anyone remotely interested in languages. So one example she gives is that for Spanish speakers, the word for bridge is masculine, but in German, the word for bridge is feminine. And German and Spanish speakers, having been shown a picture of the same bridge, tended to describe them differently. German speakers would describe it with more feminine characteristics, like saying the bridge is pretty. And Spanish speakers tended to use more masculine characteristics, like saying the bridge is strong. So she gives way more examples, much better examples. But I'm going to make the case to you that studying Sanskrit can change the way you think. Okay, so I'm going to show you some evidence of that. Okay. So, annam khadami, I eat the food. This is Sanskrit phrase. It's a valid Sanskrit phrase. You say it in Sanskrit, and you say I eat the food in English. However, it's much more common in Sanskrit than it is in English to use the passive instead. To say mayanam khadyate, the food is eaten by me. Okay, so what's the difference between these two phrases? What's happened? Instead of I eat the food, it's the food is eaten by me. So you are no longer the subject, and the food has become the subject, the object. So in effect, you've been relegated to just a part of what's happening. You're not the center of attention. So I think that can affect your thinking. Okay. What else is there? In Sanskrit, when they talk about love, they don't say I love someone. They say I love in someone. So what are they saying? They're saying that the true object of love is within. Very profound concept that is taken for granted. Okay. A few more examples. Parinayati. The literal meaning of this is lead around, but the actual contextual meaning is always marries, because it's traditional to lead around the sacrificial fire during marriage. So it's not just a verb, it's a description of what constitutes a marriage. Something else, the Bahu Rishi compound. So this is something in Sanskrit where you can create new words. You have a poetic license to create new words and new names for things. So I think this definitely encourages very creative language. I'll show you an example. Padapa, one who drinks at the foot. So that's another name for a tree. Gopala, one who is a protector of cows. This is an epithet of Krishna. Jagannatha, he who is the Lord of the universe. This is quite interesting. There's an English word, juggernaut, means a huge, powerful and overwhelming force, a very similar word. So I don't know if you've ever written an essay on a certain topic, and you might look back at it. Maybe your essay is about Sanskrit, and you might see, I've mentioned Sanskrit 100 times, being very repetitive, but there isn't another word to use for it. In Sanskrit, you definitely won't have that problem because there's this mechanism to descriptively create new words. Okay, what else is there? The gerund. This is the process of saying, having heard the question, I replied. Having spoken to the teacher, I left. Having come to the shop, I bought some food. So this is used much more commonly in Sanskrit than it is used in English. I don't know what the effect of that is, but it's quite interesting to me. Finally, it's a very interesting Sanskrit word, panchatvam, the fivefold state. What does this mean? This means death. So they're saying the fivefold state. When you're in the fivefold state is when you've died, when you've transferred back to the five elements. So I think that's a very beautiful way of describing death. Okay, and that leads me to the end of my presentation. Something I want to leave you with is just a picture of this Sanskrit peace obelisk, which is in the UK, in Oxfordshire. And just this being in the UK surprises a lot of people. It's Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, this very famous shloka. It's here, not too far from London. So, yeah. So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you like Sanskrit a little bit more now.
Thank you so much, Daniel. We all are just zapped the kind of information you have given. I would now request Chairperson Ma'am to address the audience. Ma'am, would you like to address the audience, or we can start with the question answers and then you would like to speak? Okay, so ma'am is, I think, a little busy. So
No,
yes,
I'm there.
ma'am.
I'm
Yes,
very
ma'am.
much
Yes,
there.
ma'am. Ji, ma'am. Over to you,
Daniel, I'm
ma'am.
so proud of you. I'm so happy. Otherwise, you would have missed your presentation. No? I'm so happy. I want to say, he's such a young boy with such a divine thoughts he has, no? Such a love for the Sanskrit language he has. So we are so happy to have you, Daniel. I want to just tell you the story how Daniel came to us, how we found Daniel. No? My dear principal, all my children from Amity. I was hearing St. James School from 10 years. There is a school, and I met the ambassador of Sweden, and when we met, I was with Jyoti, and then he said, and Jyoti must have told her that I'm a Sanskrit scholar. So then the Mrs. Ambassador, she said, my children studied in St. James School, and they learned the Sanskrit language over there. So it started like that, no? So I was just thinking, so then I heard this video, what Daniel had showed to everyone, the children are chanting the shlokas. So again, St. James came to my mind. So the work at the Jyoti, she was going to UK for 15-20 days to her daughter. So I asked her, Jyoti, you go to St. James School and see how they teach Sanskrit language. And we should have a connection with this school, because our school, I'm a Sanskrit person, and I want Sanskrit should be promoted, because it is the language to be promoted. So Jyoti met the director over there, and they talked about Daniel, Mr. Daniel. Huh? So she met him in the UK, met twice, and then we had an online interview with him. He gave the interview twice, once for Sanskrit and one for mathematics. Just see, my dear children, this is the will and the desire you want, no? So then at the end, I interviewed him. I asked him the question, no? He was saying he had never thought about this question. You are a mathematics boy. You have done your BSc honors in mathematics, and you have studied Sanskrit. So which language focus you more? So he said Sanskrit language. So then I told Jyoti, we should call him now. Then he is there with us. Within 4 weeks, we had a very wonderful time. He also enjoyed all the schools. As he said, principals were treated me like as a son. He loved Amity. So my dear children, I just want to say, I won't take much of your time because the questions you have, then the question answer session, we want more. I want to say Sanskrit language is not a language only. It teaches us the behavioral science. It takes you to the inner world. Because I'm a Sanskrit person, so I know how important when you read the shlok, any shlok you read, it gives you satisfaction, happiness, and to think. Gita, there's a shlok, a wonderful shlok. Uddet Atmana Atmanam. Elevate yourself.
Yourself.
Elevate yourself by yourself. Huh? But that means your parents can give you all the resources, your school can give all the resources and all the opportunities, but you have to do it yourself. Huh? Such a beautiful. When we say Gayatri Mantra, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, it is only for your intellect, it is only for your buddhi. You are praying to God, God give me the right intellect that I can take the right decisions. That is the Sanskrit language. Sanskrit language is not for any religion. It is a development, it is a human development language. The more you learn the shloks, you understand yourself better. अभी है ना आप कहते हैं अभयम मित्राद अभयम मित्राद अभयम ज्ञाताद अभयम परोक्षात् अभयम नक्तम अभयम दीवाना सर्वे आशा मम मित्रम भवन्तु. ना मुझे दोस्तों से डर लगे, हाँ अभय मित्र, और मुझे दुश्मनों से भी डर ना लगे, ना रात से डर लगे, ना दिन से डर लगे, ना फ्यूचर से, ना पास्ट से, मुझे किसी से भी भय ना हो. फियरलेसनेस, किसी से भी भय ना हो, और सारे जो दिशाएं हैं they become my friends. This is Sanskrit language, my dear children. With this, Jyoti, I want to thank you. Kate, I appreciate you for organizing this presentation and bringing Daniel to Amity.
Ma'am, you have brought Daniel. Your vision has brought Daniel. Yes, ma'am.
This is my dream, my thoughts, and my persuasion. If you have passion and persuasion, that is great. If you have that, you can do everything in your life, my dear children. So I have the passion, I have the persuasion. So the dream comes true yourself. And now because we want to make a Sanskrit movement in our Kate. That has decided way ahead. We want to start Sanskrit movement in Amity. And for that, Daniel is the first person to start that. Okay,
excellent.
Daniel,
Excellent.
thanks so much. Now we start with the question answer session.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your guidance, for your vision, for your passion, and we all are your channels, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm happy to see the children. Some of the children,
Yes,
I can say it is my pleasure.
Yes,
It
ma'am.
is my happiness. No? Jyoti, how many
Yes,
children
ma'am.
are there on the platform?
There are 5 students from each school, ma'am. 5 students from each school. So let's see how many will have
286.
questions.
286.
286
Yeah.
students.
Okay,
Okay.
now you ask the question from Mr. Daniel. He's just 22 years. He's just 22 years. Such a young boy. Huh?
Yes. So those of you who want to ask a question to Mr. Daniel can raise your hand. Okay. So Sanvi Singh Nayak, can you please introduce yourself and then ask the question? Sanvi Singh Nayak. Which school are you from? Please unmute yourself. Okay, let's go to the second student. Grihitesh Dhruvin. Grihitesh Dhruvin, kindly introduce yourself and ask the question.
Yes, ma'am. What difficulties did you face in studying Sanskrit and how did you overcome those difficulties?
First, greet the guest. Greet everyone, beta. First, greet everyone. Good evening. And then
Good
ask your
evening,
question.
everyone. Sir, my question is, what difficulties did you face in studying Sanskrit and how did you overcome those?
Yes, Senil. Any problems you faced?
Yes, thank you for your question. The biggest problem, well, let me compare Sanskrit to maths for this. If you're very stuck on a maths topic and you're not sure how to do it, and you're at home doing homework, it's very easy to go on YouTube and look up a tutorial. And they can explain it really well. Whereas for Sanskrit, you can't do that at all. Definitely not in the UK. You can't find the answers online. So you need to make the most of your teachers and find out everything from them before you go home.
Absolutely. So you had to be very attentive in the class.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
Okay. The next student, Shrestha Gupta. Shrestha Gupta. Please
Yes, ma'am.
unmute yourself. Yes, yes. Please introduce which school.
Greetings to Honorable Chairperson, ma'am, from Mr. Daniel, sir, all the principals, and my dear friends. I am Sri Gupta from class 8C of Amity International School, Noida. And I'm really very glad to get an opportunity to ask my question. So Daniel, sir, I had a doubt. I had a question that how do you connect and benefit with the recitation of slow giant in your daily life?
Can you ask the question again, beta? Just slowly, speak slowly. Ask the question again.
Yes, I had the doubt from the Daniel, sir. How do you connect and benefit with the recitation of slow giant in your daily life?
What is the benefit?
How you?
That's a very nice question. So the shloks we learned were threefold. Asatoma Sadkamaya, that one. Purnamida, Purnamidam, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. And the mantra at the start and end of every lesson, Om Paramat Mane Nama. And how we perform it is the class and the teacher would shut their eyes and go like this. The teacher would say it, and the whole class would say it back. The teacher would say it, and the student would say it, Atha. Open your eyes and begin. And the end of the lesson is the same, except instead of saying Atha, you say iti to indicate the end. Now, this one definitely helped me in my everyday life because of this kind of ritual I had to find calm whenever I needed it. In very stressful situations, I could always shut my eyes and say that mantra to myself. Maybe in a football match when I'm about to take a penalty, I can just shut my eyes, and I've said it thousands of times in classes. So having that with me all the time, I found very, very helpful. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you
Very
so much.
Good.
Yes,
Very
ma'am.
well answered. Very well answered.
Yes. Next, I would like to ask Adhiraj Chauhan. Adhiraj, you can ask your
Yeah.
question.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, respected Chairperson ma'am and all the other teachers. First, I would like to say good evening, darling sir. I had attended one of your maths classes. It was very enlightening. And for my question, living in London, where Sanskrit is very rarely spoken, what encouraged you to learn Sanskrit?
It's a very good question, because if I recite some Sanskrit to people in India, they're very impressed. If I recite it to people in the UK, they say, what was that? What did you just do? And they're confused. So you're right, the perception is very different. Yeah, but nevertheless, sorry, can you say your question one more time?
Yes,
Yeah,
Adhiraj.
so my question was that in London, Sanskrit is quite rarely spoken and not too many people there know Sanskrit. What encouraged you to learn Sanskrit?
Yeah, okay. So I just enjoyed it, really. I just enjoyed doing it and I loved learning about it. And my parents are also, they're very into Eastern philosophy and they were very encouraging for me to go in that direction. But the main reason is I enjoyed it. The stories, the wisdom, the mental clarity, and I had really, really fantastic teachers. So my teacher in the primary school, they had a brilliant storyteller, told the stories. And my teacher in the secondary school, who I read you the quote from, he was new and he came with many new teaching techniques and he could answer the hardest philosophical religious questions you can come up with. And so I'd come up with the hardest ones I could think of and ask them to him. And when he joined, he actually doubled the yearly numbers of Sanskrit students who decided to do it. So yeah.
That's very
Yes.
true.
Thank you.
That a
Very good. Nice. Very
Yes.
good.
good teacher, good parents, and of course your own effort. Everything was the best, for you. Okay. So next I would like to ask Nandini Rastogi. Nandini Rastogi, can you please introduce yourself?
Namaste and good evening to Daniel sir, respected chairperson ma'am, Jyoti ma'am, and all the dignitaries and panelists present. I am Nandini Rastogi, studying in class 10th in Amity International School, Mayur, Bihar. In the present times, all of us at some point or the other experience stress. My question to Daniel sir is, how can knowledge of Sanskrit language help us in overcoming stress? Thank you.
Overcoming stress.
Stress, yes, ma'am.
Overcoming stress. Good question.
Well, yeah, very good question. So, like I said in one of my previous answers, there's that process I have of shutting my eyes and saying that mantra I've said so many times. I definitely use that to face stress. And the great stories I've learned about, many of those characters went through very stressful situations, much more stressful than I could possibly imagine. And that's one of the benefits with all stories. But these, in my opinion, are some of the greatest stories. So I can think back to those characters in those stories and what they went through.
True, absolutely. Stories have a very deep
Good.
impact.
Good
Stories,
answer.
poems,
Good.
ma'am, sometimes when we get disheartened, you always tell us to remember a poem. कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती. So these stories and poems and words and quotations always keep ringing in our mind. Thank you so much. Next, I would like to ask Suhani Chauhan. Suhani, you would like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. Good evening, sir, respected chairperson, ma'am. Sir, I really loved listening to you speak about the benefits of Sanskrit. And what I was wondering is if you had any favorite words or phrases that you learned in Sanskrit so far.
Your favorite?
Wow. Very good question. So I think my favorite one is the Trayambakam Yajamahe Sukandhim Pushti Vardhanam. That one, that's often said in the Havan ceremonies. And I'd say that one because that was the first mantra I learnt myself just out of my own interest. I'd sort of researched, listened to many different ones, but this one sounded really, really good to me, and I looked it up and translated it myself, just to find out exactly what it meant. So yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much.
He's very clear. Daniel is very, very, very good. Very clear in his thoughts.
The clarity of thought, ma'am. I think because of Sanskrit only, he has that clarity of thought. Yeah. Next, I would like to ask Samara Chauhan. Samara Chauhan is one of the 3 sisters who won the F1 in school competition, which you follow very closely, Daniel. So we are very, very proud of our students. Over to you, Samara.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity, Jyoti ma'am and Chairperson ma'am. So my question is that, do you think that learning Sanskrit has like made you more open-minded or curious about learning more about the world?
Say it
Very
again.
good question. Very good question. Thank you. Before I answer, big congratulations to you and your competition. I've been following it, how you've been doing, and I heard you got to meet some of the drivers as well. Very interesting. Okay. Yes, it allowed me to learn so much I would never have otherwise had the chance to. And like I said, I think it taught me more about the world. There are so many ideas I never would have come across. This was me accessing the Vedic era, where there's so much knowledge which people don't know about in the West. And so I can't imagine what I'd be like if I'd never found this, because it's become a really significant part of what I do now and what I'm interested in. So yeah.
True. Sanskrit has brought you to India and to Amity.
That's correct, no?
Right.
That was
great opportunity. Jyoti, this is a great opportunity.
Great opportunity. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Has given the opportunity to Mr. Daniel. No?
Yes. So Samara, Sanskrit will also help, you to be more global, to think more globally. Okay. So now I would like to request Aviral Kansal. Aviral Kansal, please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Good evening, ma'am. And respected chairperson, ma'am, and everybody else present here. So I'm Aviral Kansal from Amity Viraj Khand, Lucknow. And my question is, as Sanskrit is considered most scientific language and it is being used in AI also, I want to ask what can be done to improve its spread, its reach to normal people.
Very good. Artificial intelligence, connected to artificial intelligence.
And computer science also. Computer science. And,
yes, ma'am.
Computer language. No?
So actually, last week, I got the chance to speak to the Sanskrit department at Amity University, Noida. And someone in the Sanskrit faculty had just finished researching into Sanskrit and computation and AI. And because I'd only heard rumors about Sanskrit being used in computers, and now I know firsthand it's legitimate. So I don't know a lot about that, but it doesn't surprise me because obviously the language is extremely precise. And for example, exactly what you write is how you say it. You can't say the same for English. And words are scientifically joined together, and when you're translating, you would scientifically take them apart again.
True.
No, it's a scientific language.
Very
true.
And how can we spread this to regular people, I think was part of the question. Well, that's a mission we have, and everyone who studies Sanskrit can become a representative of Sanskrit and an ambassador, and you can tell people wherever you go how much you've enjoyed or what you like about the language, why it's important to you. And it's a part of my responsibility now, as I volunteered for my school, is to tell people about the IGCSE, because many people don't realize you can do an IGCSE in Sanskrit. So just spreading that message to more people could get more people involved with the language too. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And maybe, because of artificial intelligence, all the mundane things will be taken care, and then we can concentrate more on profound things like learning Sanskrit. Hopefully. Okay. So next student, Parnika Sharma. Parnika Sharma, you can ask your question.
Yes, sir. Greetings to Mr. Daniel, sir, and the respected chairperson. My question for you is that when you decided to learn,
Which school, beta? Which school?
I'm from AIS 46, AIST 46. Okay. And my question for you is that when you decided to learn Sanskrit, which is not a very popular language to learn, how did your known ones in the UK react to it?
How did my friends in the UK react to it? Interesting. Well, lots of them had come through the school system and have been connected with the language and already knew about it. So they would understand. If I met people outside the school, they'd have no idea what it is. Sometimes I'd bring it up and I'd tell it to them, and it's quite a conversation starter. Sometimes I'd leave it out because people find it so confusing and have never heard of it. But generally, people were very accepting, and even if they weren't, I wasn't bothered because I loved the language and I really wanted to study it. I wasn't concerned if other people liked it or didn't.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Now I would like to ask Vagisha Vashishtha. Vagisha Vashishtha, you can ask your question.
Chairperson, ma'am, Daniel, sir, and all present here. I'm Vagisha Vashishtha of 9th grade from AIS, Navi Mumbai. My question is, sir, before you actually started learning, did you feel interested in Sanskrit just like a language in general, or was there any other attraction you might have had towards it?
It was definitely I was attracted by the stories and the great storytelling of my teacher, Mr. Jessup, and he actually wrote the IGCSE textbooks as well. That definitely inspired me. So looking back on Sanskrit, I'd say my secondary school teacher did the most for me and taught me the most about the world and Sanskrit. But I'd thank my primary school teacher more, because I don't know if I would have decided to study it so far in the future if I hadn't been so inspired by the stories.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Daniel.
Inspire the children, no? Jyoti?
Yes, ma'am.
He has inspired the children.
Yes, ma'am. He has inspired the children. Ma'am, should we continue with the question answers now, or should we stop because it's now 5:40?
Also online, no? Samaya was also there.
Yes, ma'am. A few more students we can take.
Samaya Chauhan was also there.
Yes,
I don't see her.
yes, ma'am. Samaya Chauhan, would you like to ask your question, beta?
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. A very good evening, respected chairperson, ma'am, Jyoti, ma'am, and Daniel, sir. I've really loved hearing you. So you mentioned that Sanskrit and the Bhagavad Gita explicitly can be adopted in the secular education systems now because it's more historically rich than culturally and religiously rich. And I was researching that there are around 20 religions that come up every year. So do you think these newfangled religions can also adopt Sanskrit just because of its historical essence, or are there some other factors involved?
What a great question. I'd certainly hope they adopted Sanskrit for their own benefit in learning and having access to these texts. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did, because Bhagavad Gita is so rich, and there's been so many books come out of it, people's commentaries, religious commentaries, and all different kinds of opinions. But what is important is in the secular education to just study the text itself and come to your own conclusions and have your own discussions. You can get a Vedic interpretation of the meaning, but it shouldn't be told to you what things are like in a religious way, in my opinion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Samaya, would you like to share the shloka which you chanted for the F1 competition? And you know, you can
Daniel,
give them-
Samaya, Jyoti, tell him that Samaya was also the part of this Formula One competition.
Yes, absolutely. So Samaya Chauhan was also part of the team which won the F1 competition global finals, and they started their presentation with the Sanskrit shlok. Samaya, can you share that shlok and the meaning, please?
Yes, ma'am, sure. Om Sarvabhut Vyapt Lok Tvisha Ekastham Tat Bhut Urja Vyapt Lok Tvisha. This means that like all
There is some. Yeah. Can you repeat, Samaya? There was some network issue.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yes.
Ekastham Vyapt Lok Tvisha. This shlok means that like different elements such as fire, oxygen, water, ice combine to form an unstoppable force, we Team Urja, comprised of women empowerment, drive and skill, are an unstoppable force.
Fantastic. 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 Urja.
Very
So the word Urja also means energy.
Jyoti, I want to show everyone what Daniel presented me yesterday.
Okay, ma'am.
Such a creative.
Yes, surely, ma'am. Surely, ma'am.
All the principals and teachers and children. Yesterday, I met Daniel. He brought a tulsi plant for me, but in a very creative way. He has written the Sanskrit shlok Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukh Bhag Bhavet. And then last, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. When you say 3 times Om after reciting Shanti, you really feel peace in yourself, no? So this is so creative. Principals, are you seeing that? This is so creative. We have never done it before. We can take the idea of from Daniel.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely, ma'am. Definitely.
Beautiful, ma'am. Beautiful.
Can you see? Can you see?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am,
We can see.
Yes, ma'am.
Very
nice. Yeah,
Because I like the idea. I think I thought I should share with everyone.
Yes, ma'am. And whenever he writes, ma'am, the feedbacks, reports, and all, he always starts with the Sanskrit shlok. He starts with the Sanskrit.
He is a pure embodiment of Sanskrit lover.
True, ma'am. Absolutely true.
Such a pleasure to see him. I'm so happy to see. And his thoughts. And he every day, my dear children, he's improving. Every day he improved. His writing skills, his way of speaking, because he's now, I think so from the day one, now he's become so confident, such a wonderful presentation.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
answering all the questions. So
Yes,
great,
ma'am.
Daniel, we are so thankful to you. I very appreciate your thoughts. It's good. At this young age, you're developing yourself very, very nicely. And your parents and your school must be proud of you.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
So, ma'am, can we stop the
now I
question
think
answer,
so.
the vote of thanks? Would you like to thank the university?
I want to thank all my principals,
Yes,
all my children who were online asking the question. And I want to thank Amity Sector 46, Mrs. Aarti Chopra, and her team for organizing this platform for AERC.
Thank you.
Great. And we want to thank Jyoti Jyoti, she brought Daniel to Amity, Everything requires, first you require a vision and aim, and then you have to work for it. Then it comes true. If we think, we dream, I will do this, I will do that, but for that you have to work. Then only, my dear children, your dreams are complete.
Absolutely, ma'am.
I want to thank each one of you, all the principals, all the advisors are there. Grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
A
you, ma'am.
beautiful
Thank
day
you so
today.
much.
Thank you very
We
much.
started
Thank
with
you,
this,
ma'am. Thank you.
Jyoti,
Namaskar, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Jyoti,
I just
our
want,
Sanskrit movement
Ji.
has started.
ma'am, I
Our
just want to
Sanskrit
add that you have
our Sanskrit
selected.
movement has started.
Yes, ma'am. In fact, I want to just mention this, ma'am, that you have started on a very auspicious note because today is Ganesh Chaturthi, and it is also nature's, equinox is going to come very soon. We are in that period of intellectual balance. The nature also has a balance, and this is intellectual meeting. So this balance is also there. So because of both these things and your vision, ma'am, this will definitely bear fruit. We are your soldiers and we will work in this.
My soldiers or my young soldiers, our students, our Amitians, they are going to take it forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. They will study the Sanskrit scripture and they will know how the beautiful world we are in. Huh?
Absolutely, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Daniel.
Chairperson.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Chairperson, ma'am.
University.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Jyoti, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jyoti.
ma'am.
Great
Thank you, Jyoti,
opportunity
ma'am.
for all of us,
Pleasure
Jyoti,
to
ma'am.
see Sangeeta and Nivedita.
Yes.
Nivedita and Sangeeta, I'm really happy to see both of you.
Thank
औरों
you.
को तो मैं देखती रहती हूँ पर आप दोनों को कम देखती हूँ पर a pleasure to see both of you.
Thank you, ma'am. It's our pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, Chairperson,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Chairperson, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you, Daniel,
And
for
thank
a
you to
great
everyone.
presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
Daniel,
Thank you.
so much. It was enlightening. Thank you, Daniel. Wonderful presentation.
पिक्चर देखी है कभी संस्कृत में कोई पिक्चर बनी हो या देखी हो?
नहीं सर.
सर Amitians बनाएंगे.
हाँ.
It's wonderful. हम लोग
Great speaker.
तेलुगु में, पंजाबी में सब में पिक्चर बनती हैं, लेकिन I have never heard कि संस्कृत की पिक्चर बनी है.
सर एक गांव है जिसमें सब लोग संस्कृत में ही बोलते हैं अभी भी.
बनी है सर. संस्कृत में है.
हमने स्कूल असेंबली तो कर ली है अब एकदम.
One day we should keep where we will only speak in Sanskrit.
Yes, ma'am. हमने असेंबली की थी. असेंबली हम लोग करते हैं.
हर हफ्ते हमारे यहाँ होती है. Every week, once in a week.
हम भी आपस में संस्कृत में ही बातें करेंगे एक दिन.
पहले सीखे तो सही.
मैम बहुत
मोदी जी ने अपील की है कि एक-एक वर्ड बोले.
जी एक वर्ड बोलेंगे, बिल्कुल बोलेंगे. नमस्ते तो सबसे पहले.
So we can end with नमो नमे.
नमो नमः. पूर्वदा किसको श्लोक आता है पूरा? जो एंड करते हैं पूर्वदा. Daniel, you know the? Yeah, please.
Yes, he knows.
Chant that because that's the ending. Yeah.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you,
to
Daniel.
everyone.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you to chairperson who gives such kind of program.
Thank you. And
Another-
Sanskrit movie Shankaracharya, in case you want to watch it. I just got this from Kaushik.
Acha ji.
Shankaracharya.
Acha ji. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Divya ma'am.